Hello and welcome to Circular Shift 2021, the annual event of the Cradle Products Innovation Institute. I'm Christina Raab, Vice President, Strategy and Development. We are streaming live from Amsterdam today and are delighted that you are joining us virtually from around the world. At the Cradle Products Innovation Institute, we are dedicated to powering innovation for a circular economy through products and systems that have a positive impact on people and planet. Through the Cradle Certified Products Program, we set the global standard for products that are safe, circular, and responsibly made. We also power the global shift to a circular economy through partnerships and collaborative initiatives that lead to unprecedented innovation and industry transformation. What does it take to lead the systemic shift to a circular economy that is safe and equitable? More than ever before, bold and pioneering leadership is required to make a positive impact for the planet and for generations to come. For this year's event, we bring together industry and governmental leaders that are demonstrating this visionary leadership in their respective fields and sectors. They show us daily how to make a circular future a reality already today. Together with these leading names in business and policy, we will explore throughout today's event how to turn buildings and infrastructure fully circular, how to redefine products and supply chains made for tomorrow, how to tap into sustainable purchasing and evolving consumer values, and how to accelerate a holistic circular shift through partnerships. Join us in the debate by posting on social media throughout the event using the hashtag CircularShift21. Should you not be able to stay with us for the entire live experience today, we will make the session recordings available on the Institute's YouTube channel following the event. Without further ado, let us meet the first panel for today. Our built surroundings play a critical role, not only for our own health and well-being, but also for the climate and future of our planet. How can we turn buildings and infrastructure fully circular? What does it mean to specify for a sustainable built environment? And how can we finance the circular transition of the real estate industry? To discuss these questions, I'm joined today by Christine Lemaitre, CEO of the German Sustainable Building Council, Kurt Zachariasse, CEO of Delta Development Group, and Joe Guy, Environment and Sustainability Manager at the England Environment Agency. Welcome to all of you.
Hello.
Hello, great to be here.
Nice to be here.
Great to see you all. Let us start with setting the context for the discussion today and give some background on your organizations. Joe, what is the mission of the Environment Agency of England, and what is the E-Mission 2030 ambition about?
Okay, thank you, Christina. The Environment Agency, in 3 words, is to protect people and wildlife, but let's open that up a little bit more. The Environment Agency really has 2 main functions. The first is the regulator of whatever we take out of and put into the phases of land, air and water. So essentially that means it might be abstracting water for drinking water and then putting back in from a wastewater treatment plant, but also looks at industrial processes and regulating those. And together with agriculture, and other sectors. But the second function, and the one which is probably more relevant to the discussion today, is that we are the flood risk manager for England. We operate a large number of assets to ensure that flood protection is delivered to industry, to people, to communities. And we're moving that approach of construction, operation and maintenance. We're moving from that paradigm to a new paradigm, which is an asset management approach, where we're looking to deliver best value to multiple beneficiaries as a result of the use of our assets. And you asked the second question about emission 2030. Emission 2030 is the Environment Agency's ambition to deliver sustainably up to, as it kind of says in the title, 2030. We originally started off with emission 2020, and we got to the end of that a couple of years ago, and that was really focused on our estate and the impacts of our estate. Looking at emission 2030, we've set out 4 key ambitions. The first is to respond to the climate emergency. And so in that, we are talking about the journey to net zero by 2030 and adding resiliency to all of our activities. The second ambition is optimizing our use of resources, and within that, the requirements around the circular economy. And then thirdly, delivering environmental net gain from all our activities. And finally, delivering benefits to people and communities in all that we do.
Christina, what is DTMB doing? Which activities are you pursuing to drive a large-scale transformation of the building sector?
Yeah, thank you. I would say our key activity it goes around certification. We chose, when we were founded in 2007, that we can best achieve the necessary transformation in our built environment, where we have all these different stakeholders with different interests, and where we see a very diverse community of small architectural firms all the way to large consulting firms or construction companies, that basically a certification system serves as a transformation tool. We always say, the topics are way too important that we don't measure them. And we have to move away from this marketing things and everyone is green and sustainable towards measuring really the impact. And through measuring and through certification, we gain as well a lot of knowledge. So another big part of our work is really this knowledge transfer, educating people, make them aware, make them understand. And I think this is 2 key aspects on how we can make that transformation in the built environment happen.
And Kurt, what is the Delta Development Group about?
Well, Delta Development Group is a privately owned real estate developer and investor. We've been pioneering cradle to cradle in the built environment since 2005 and adapted it very early on. Our mission is basically I always say we want to build the world we want to live. And what I mean with that's an underlying commitment to build a better world and to build places where people can live, work and thrive. And not only now, but also do that in the future. And for us, cradle to cradle and circularity is an integral part of all our activities.
Thank you for this context setting on your organizations. Let's dive a little bit deeper on some of your specific projects. And Joe, you are heading and leading the team 2100 at the Environment Agency. Could you share with us what this program is about and what was the reason for setting it up?
Yes, certainly. You'll recall when I mentioned earlier our activities around flood risk management and us moving to a new paradigm of asset management. And so Team 2100 is a pathfinder program that the Environment Agency has set up to move to that paradigm, to understand how we do it. And so it is set up wholly around managing the assets and becoming certified in an asset management manner for the Thames estuary and all of the flood risk managements in that. So that includes about 4,000 assets, 9 large barriers, things like you see the Thames barrier, there are others in the estuary, and about 350 kilometres of flood risk management walls, banks, dikes that you might see. it's a large program. It's £308 million over 10 years. So it's about 350 million euros. And what makes it particularly interesting is that environment is a key outcome from that. And that environment sits alongside engineering in the governance processes around deciding how we manage those assets as we move forwards.
And how are you specifically driving a circular infrastructure with this program?
So when we started out the program, we realized that there was a need to embed environment very clearly into it. And we started to think very early on about we needed to move beyond net zero as a delivery process. And therefore, it became very obvious to us that the material flows that we have within delivering those flood risk management assets and their management. Flood risk management, asset management takes up just over 50% of the agency's whole annual carbon demand. So we realised there's a really significant issue there around the materials and if you like, the health of those materials that we use to make sure that we're putting ourselves in a better position. So we started to embed circularity into the contract. And so we have got to a point now where the contract provisions require certification percentage, 25% of all construction materials to be certified to a couple of certification schemes, one of which is Cradle to Cradle. So that's kind of how we started to embed it into that program.
Thank you, and we'll look at this a little bit in more detail later on in the discussion. Christina, you are operating one of the world's leading building certification schemes. And how are you addressing in that schemes the very important topics of circularity and climate positivity for the building sector? And how do you see these topics evolving in your building scheme?
Yeah, I would say the aspects of circular buildings is part of the DNA of the DTMB system. And we implemented that right from the start. So we require a life cycle analysis as well as life cycle cost calculations, but as well a criteria about the deconstruction of buildings. We have very detailed requirements on the quality of building material, on products, especially for the ingredients. So we're sure there are no toxins inside. And for the new construction scheme, we require 4 weeks after completion in indoor air quality testing. And that is actually one of the key criteria. So if these measurements are not met, the benchmarks, the building is not certifiable. And I think this gives from a lot of different aspects. And I think when we talk about circularity, especially in the built environment, we have to see that it's a very multidimensional challenge we're facing. We have on one side the resource impact, we have the health impact, but we as well have the environmental impact through emissions. And in our certification, we really try to bring all these sometimes conflicting goals together and make sure that at least during the design process and the decision-making process, there's transparency and there's a holistic understanding of what we're building, because just one good product is not going to make a whole building sustainable. So this is a key part of our work. And we launched 3 years ago for existing building an award for climate positive buildings relating to our ongoing climate crisis, where we said this is the good news, especially for the building sector. We can already build good buildings today. We can build buildings how we need to have them by 2045, the latest, which are actually net zero or even climate positive. So they produce more energy than they consume. And I think this kind of mind shift to show that as well in the industry, it's not about always discussing problems, but really showing their solutions and their positive examples. This is really something we need to emphasize more, and this is what we're working on in all different schemes we're offering.
Mm-hmm. Which role do product standards like Cradle to Cradle certified play for building schemes and also in particular for your broader membership?
Well, I would say the selection of materials is right now the key challenge for many architects, investors. You know, this, like what I just described, this conflicting goals. You know, we want to have CO2 reduced materials. We want to have healthy materials. We want to have materials which eventually can be recycled or even reused in another building. So building or product certifications actually play a key role, and they have a big responsibility because it makes it easier for the market to adjust and to handle all these challenges because design processes are always done under time and money pressure. So the architects, investors, they have to have tools where they can rely on. So I think it's a key aspect at the moment we see is this whole question around materials, educating the market. And I think certification schemes, especially the cradle to cradle standard, have a big responsibility in fulfilling this promise on quality, because this is what we need to offer to the market. So I think it's right now a very interesting time, very dynamic time, and we need to streamline our activities on the material level, but as well on the building level together.
Kurt, you mentioned you have been operating under the cradle-to-cradle circular economy principle since basically 2005 when Delta Development Group was set up. What are some of the key learnings from your long-term circularity implementation journey?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we faced, particularly in the beginning when we wanted to start implementing cradle to cradle within our buildings, was the lack of materials available. And one of the key learnings is you normally, as a developer, you go in, you specify your building, you tender it out and go to the market and say, basically, this is what I want, give us the lowest price. And we noticed, particularly with the general contractors, that that didn't quite work in that way, that you had to go deeper into the supply chain of the construction industry to go into to the material suppliers and to engage in discussions with them. So basically what we did, we changed around our whole procurement system, where rather than saying, this is what I want, give you lowest price, we started to create co-makerships, creating long-term preferred supplierships with manufacturers, etc. And we have at the moment more than 70 of those partnerships which exist already for quite a long time, where we engage in the discussion, and rather than saying this is what I want, give the lowest price, we say this is our budget, give us and this is our ambition, give us the highest quality, and co-create and co-design with us, which makes that we have a process where much earlier on we sit with our supply chain and providers, where we can invoke innovation. Because why would you start to innovate and take a risk for a client if you are tendered out the next time? You can only do that if you have an ongoing relationship. And I think that is key, that partnership, that learning team, that co-creation is really key to building a set of materials, building techniques, building principles for design, for disassembly, which we've used to allow us to build those buildings at controllable cost as well. Because what we found when we started to integrate the supply chain and start to create learning teams is that in effect, a lot of the failure costs you normally incur during a construction process, they went down. Our processes became more efficient. Our construction time came down. And interestingly enough, while we started this mostly in the financial crisis when manufacturers were eager to engage with us because the times were bad and we could give them continuity. We also benefit from it now when the shoe is on the other foot and there is more pressure and suppliers can basically ask any price you want. We also tend to get a bit more loyalty from that long-standing relationship and can engage into solutions that even now allows us to control cost, which is also a very, very important point. I think in many aspects, you get the supply chain you deserve in the way you treat each other. And more importantly, I think it's more fun to create something together, create those partnerships rather than trying to squeeze out the maximum and don't use each other's know-how. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. For me, that was the biggest lesson.
Yeah, and Kurt, Park 2020 is one of your bigger flagship projects. Which other current development projects do you have that apply the cradle-to-cradle circular economy principles?
Well, the last 2 years we've been focusing a bit more on logistics. We're doing a very exciting project at the moment in Germany, where we are building for Levi Strauss their new European distribution center. which is the first time we apply cradle-to-cradle principles in a logistics development in Germany, with very high ambitions in terms of sustainability, and a fantastic client also that drives that as well. And I think that's important again, that partnership between the client and investor. But Levi Strauss is a 70,000 square meter facility, which where construction will start in November, with a delivery in early 23. So that's one. We just delivered a project called ABC Square in the Netherlands, also a large logistics facilities. And logistics is actually quite an interesting thing. There's a lot of demand. They're relatively technically simple buildings. They're not easy to recommission to something else, to housing or something else. So for me, they are should really be built along circular principles. And I find the poetry that the warehouse itself is also a warehouse of future materials sort of attractive.
Christine, earlier this year, the European Commission published the EU Taxonomy, a harmonized EU-wide classification system for sustainable investments. How do you see the real estate sector prepared for the EU Taxonomy, and what can they do or what must they do to embrace this concept further?
Well, I would say part of the market was prepared or is prepared, but there's a big part of the market as well who kind of woke up through this kind of initiative. And I think it's the right way. I mean, it's nothing actually that should have hit anyone by surprise. Part of the Paris Agreement, paragraph 8, is sustainable finance. So in 2015, the world already decided that they will basically introduce sustainable finance principles globally to manage the climate crisis or to prevent the climate change. So, and so basically the EU taxonomy is a logic result from that. And what we see basically is that it now pushes the real estate sector to really go down on the building level, because especially if you look at buildings more from a financial point, it was always a little bit more on the high level and the portfolio and back and forth. And especially these taxonomy criteria, they really force them to really look into the building in detail on technical level, and as well on a holistic level. And I think this principle they introduced, which is called do no significant harm. So basically it's not being energy efficient and you don't look at other things, but you have to be energy efficient, but you as well have to look into biodiversity, circularity, and many other topics. I think is the right way forward. And I think this is really a game changer, or it will be a game changer, because it brings these worlds together. And I think Kurt said it very well. In the end, it comes down to people. It comes down to a relationship you build, an investor with a client, with a supply chain, but as well with what we need as well is this relationship between the financial world, because buildings are like the #1 investment good. I think Germany just got ranked #7 globally as one of the most popular investment markets. So we have this big influence from the financial sector. And I think this taxonomy criteria are now a good step forward to bring a common language for the more technical oriented building industry, bring it together with how the financial world is looking at buildings.
Mm-hmm. Joe, coming back to the infrastructure part, how is Team 2100 challenging the conventional infrastructure supply chains, and how are you specifically specifying in this project?
I think one of the first things that's quite interesting, you said the word challenging. I think that's probably the key thing we have to do, because I think within a UK context, what we're doing is quite unique at scale and in the sector we're doing it, because we're attempting to take probably a sector that's more used to dealing with traditional built environment, and we're trying to apply it to risk management assets or flood risk management assets. So it's challenging in the fact that we're having to do this, or we're saying we want to do it. But also I think really important is that we're open with the supply chain about why we're doing it, so that they can understand it, because they need to realise we're very often at the start of a supply chain, or at the very top of the process, and the supply chain is right at the bottom. So we need to be able to explain to them why. We need to make sure that message gets through all of those levels that Kurt had mentioned when you're talking to people. So we're making a particular point of going and talking to the supply chain, and I suppose this you could say is another example of how we're talking to the supply chain, saying, yes, we are serious about this. I think also we then need to be asking a number of our normal suppliers to think about certification, because we think probably a lot of their materials aren't so far from certification. So it's sort of saying to them that you need to develop your thinking, your approach to this, because if we're asking, you can be sure that someone's going to be asking quite soon after us. But I think the other thing that we need to do is I think we need to send as a large organisation, the Environment Agency's budget is about 1.2 billion euros a year. We need to be sending clear messages, not just ourselves, but with our international partners. So, for example, we are working with the Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands to talk about how we deal with the circular economy, and whether as two organisations we can send some quite clear messages to the market and to the supply chain of what our ambitions around this are.
And your project has indeed a lighthouse function for some of the other environment agencies worldwide, and also for public procurers. What are some of the key lessons learned that you would want to share with your fellow peers that might want to set up similar programs at their agencies?
I think that the first one is that a realisation you're not alone in having these desires. So go and seek out the people in your organisation who have, and not just in your organisation, in your contracting and consulting and supply chain, who have a similar desire. Create what we jokingly call the band of the willing, because those people are really key to shifting people's views in all of those organisations. So create a band of the willing, it's really important. Then secondly, try and think a little bit outside of where you normally work. We probably, a number of us work within probably quite an engineering discipline area. So, but procurement is really important in everything we do. So go and talk to the procurement processes that you have to use so they understand why you're doing what you're doing. Explain to them, you know, why this is really important and how it links to your organisation's corporate ambitions. We have emission 2030. We have to be able to link that. And then finally, I think that the other thing is that we've learned that our quantity surveyors, our cost consultants are key in this. We need to understand that they have a role to do, and their role is to make sure that the costs around projects are reasonable. And sometimes adding something like this in feels a bit scary. And so therefore we need to be able to give them the comfort that it is okay to specify materials and accept that specification of materials that meet these circular economy requirements.
Kurt, we have been speaking about supply chains. And of course, your partners, our clients, are also the broader public. So from your experience over the decade, how has the acceptance, how has the interest in circular development projects changed with these target groups, like your clients, your partners, and the general public?
I think it's changed massively, but it's been a slow process. We were quite early on. And I started this really as a drive, as a personal drive, because I wanted to implement this and build this. I've always looked at it from a business perspective on as a quality I would add, and something that would add to my customers, to my clients, to my business relations, either in lowering costs, raising revenues, or lowering risks. Now, if you look at that, then you know the easy wins like lower energy costs and things like that, they're not that hard to quantify. But when it comes to risk, people have to perceive certain risk, and it's just taken a long time before they did. So in the beginning, we often did things, and we tried to show them, but it was hard to get investors to buy into it or show tenants the additional value. At the same time, what we also noticed, as a developer, we have a short-term business model, which means that as a developer, purely, you want to create something and then sell it off to an investor, but you don't do the long term. So if you invest for the long term, you have that difficulty that you're investing, but someone else reaps the benefits. Or sometimes those benefits are harder to quantify. I mean, what is the value of aesthetics? What's the value of clean air? So there are a number of issues where it took time for the world to catch up. And particularly when you look at risk, long time, you know, that was a sort of a faraway show. So in the beginning, we moved quite a bit on marketing value and the quality of our product itself. But I learned a valuable lesson in that sense, that sometimes, pioneers get killed and settlers get rich. And that's sometimes an interesting lesson to learn. It changed probably 2-3 years ago massively, where we did two things. One was we were going around and raising institutional capital because we wanted to change our business model, not from just becoming a developer, but also keeping hold of our assets for the longer term, basically to solve that conflict of interest between our short-term business model and the long-term value we wanted to create. And what struck me during those rounds we made in Germany, in the city, was that all of a sudden the subject of ESG, sustainability, was much higher on the agenda. And that is because people started to perceive the risk of coming regulations from carbon, from toxicity, etc. It's becoming tangible, it's becoming real, the horizon is coming near. And there is a real perception that if you do not invest at the moment in the quality in terms of sustainability into your buildings, you may be left with stranded assets in a few years, because there will come potentially even disrupting regulation, pushing back on carbon particularly, but also many other aspects that the built environment is creating. And it's interesting to see, and also heartwarming to see, that you see that whole perception changing. And that is not because everyone is suddenly green, although I do really believe in that there's an internal want of people to do something good. That's a general drive. But a lot of people are caught in their system and they say, yes, I would like to do it, but in my position I cannot, which sounds absolutely crazy to me, because to me that is then the system, there's something wrong. But it's good to see when you show the numbers, when you can make that risk tangible and you start to talk economics, that institutional capital is really putting their money where their mouth is. And I think that's a massive change as compared to a number of years ago.
Let us wrap up this panel discussion and look a little bit into the future. Christine, which main levers do you see for making climate positive buildings and circular building materials the norm in this decade?
Well, I think it will be a mixture of several things. I think one thing is that the regulation will ask for it. This is one of the driver. I think we will, as well, from the financial sector, what we already discussed, we see a lot of change, of understanding, and of just demanding high quality buildings, because I think in the end that's it. I mean, a sustainable building is a building that is future proofed and has high quality. And I think the other big part is knowledge. And this, to me, I think Joe just said, it's like you're not alone. I think this is a key part, and maybe to build on that, you're not alone, and most likely you're not the first one. And I think this is a key understanding we have to bring in the market. It doesn't help if we're all pioneers. I know everyone wants to be an inventor, but I think many things we've been discussing on how to do a sustainable buildings, what is right, what kind of materials we're using. I mean, now we see this reviving of wood construction, of building with rammed earth. I mean, these things are not new, they're just rediscovered. So this is what I would tell everyone is, you're not alone and you're not the first one, and you don't need to be the first one. So don't start to always reinvent the wheel, and really use the knowledge that's out there. There's already so much knowledge out there. And I really believe we have the tools, we have the knowledge, and there's no reason not to get started. And we have to really move out of this, always trying to maybe quantify everything. We're always talking about costs, but if you talk about costs, really look at the real costs. And we see so many who are like starting and then they educate themselves, they set up a working group. I mean, if you would add up all these costs, you spent in time, you could have done so much already on your building. So that would be is my key message always. It's like to get started. We know what to do, and most things are really common sense. I think we've done so many crazy things, if you think about it, in the built environment. The materials we use, we put toxins in our building materials. Now we have to deal with that. these things are not really logic and it's not common sense. So I think if you come back to common sense, do the things which are right, we all will move much quicker and as a team. And I think this is another big thing, is we need to collaborate more and learn from each other.
Joe, how do you see the future of sustainable asset management and sustainable infrastructure developing?
I think one of the key things that we're starting to see is that we need to think about how much material we use is the first thing. So when we're using asset management planning, I'd rather, as I think Christine had said before, I would rather that we didn't build something and that we maintain what we had. So I think one of the key things is that we decide to actually move to a process where we think more clearly about managing our assets to reduce our demand for material in the first place. That's got to be the most sensible, first stop. Then from that, then I think what we need to do is when we start to develop our asset management strategies as to how we're going to approach large groups of assets over large areas, that we embed sustainability very quickly as one of the key drivers that shapes our asset management decisions. And that way, if we make an intervention on an asset, we can actually say, okay, well, let's do that in the most sustainable manner. Let's just not think least cost, because we're going to be coming back to these assets in the future. We know that they're long-lived. And then I think finally is that we need to kind of think about how we set the priorities when we're making those decisions to make sure that circularity in the materials that we use is one of the key decision points. So we've kind of got like 3 levels, if you like. We've got a very high level approach, which is say, try to use less. The second approach is to say, let's think about when we're going to intervene so that our interventions are the most, if you like, the most sustainable across a whole number of parts of the sustainability agenda. And then thirdly, let's think really carefully when we do something, what it is that we're actually going to use to obtain that level of service from the asset we desire.
Thank you, Joe. And over to you, Kurt, for the last reflections. What's your vision in terms of circularity for the real estate and finance sector, and how can we finally get it more into the mainstream?
Well, interestingly enough, when you look at our sector, it always strikes me that before the Industrial Revolution, there was a slower pace. We built cities in a more layered way and in a more consistent way. And somehow the buildings before that period, we tend to, we call them listed buildings and monuments, and we want to keep them. And somewhere, and most of the stuff we built in the 60s, 70s and 80s, we're already looking to redevelop. So for me, there is a vision that we would keep our buildings much longer than we do now. And the key for that is aesthetics and design and quality, but also using circularity to create more adaptability and agility. When you build your buildings for disassembly, you design them for disassembly, and you optimize the residual value of materials and components that come out of it, what you're actually doing from an economic point of view, you're lowering the barrier for change. And I think particularly on the interior side, to easily adapt and change buildings so they can adapt and grow along with changing demands over time is one of the key aspects to keep our buildings longer. But aesthetics and beauty for me is another aspect that we sort of seem to have forgotten. Everything is done from a cost perspective. And I think showing those improved economics and showing the longer term things, and I think Christine hit a very important point. I think we need more integrated accounting where we not only look at cost, but look also at the societal cost, and have a broader discussion on our concept of value. Because I'm convinced at the moment, because of our limited concept of value at this point, we put the breadcrumbs for our capitalistic systems in the wrong way, and as a world we're moving the wrong way. So moving it to a broader thing is something that maybe as a trained accountant from origin, I feel my original profession should do a better job at. But for me, it's that agility, that beauty, adaptability of buildings, and also have an honest discussion on carbon, also looking at the embedded carbon truly, And I think circularity can play an important role in lowering that footprint, looking at internal energy loads, also of user loads, and not just the base building, etc. Just be honest on what you're doing and show the full scope of the impact we're creating. And I think there's a lot of work to do, but we do have the tools and we can build it already today, those buildings. And actually, as a professional, I can't think why it wouldn't also be more fun to create something of quality and lasting quality, because for me, that is literally building the world for our children. So for me, that would be the vision that I hope we will pursue. At least I will pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Kurt. And for me, it was also great fun to have the conversation with all of you today. So thank you so much, Joe and Christine and Kurt, for being with us and for this very insightful discussion and conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To showcase a further example what cradle-to-cradle principles look like in practice, we will now play a brief video of our event sponsor, Moser. Headquartered here in the Netherlands, Moser is a producer of ceramic tiles and has been part of the Cradle-to-Cradle certified community for more than a decade. After the video, I will be in conversation with the European Chemicals Agency.
Moser has designed, developed and produced ceramic tiles in Maastricht since 1883. We enable architects and designers around the world to create signature surfaces. Sustainability is our foremost priority. To achieve this, we adhere to the cradle-to-cradle philosophy, which helps us make a positive contribution to our society, our economy, and our planet. All of our products are made using the purest raw materials and have outstanding recycling potential. We save energy and water and create excellent social conditions. The key ingredients in our tiles are clay and sand, natural ingredients that do not harm the environment or public health. 1/3 of our energy needs is generated by renewable resources. We have closed process water cycles and purify the water used by our factories on site. Using the purest resources means our tiles can be reused or recycled. We are committed to creating a safe and pleasant environment for our employees, for nearby residents, and for people around the world who live and work in buildings featuring Moser tiles. We consciously choose to keep our production site in Maastricht in order to stay as close to our resources as possible. Our competence centre is also located near our factories. This work method has earned us a Cradle-to-Cradle silver certificate for almost our entire collection. We are the world's first producer of ceramic tiles to have earned this certificate. Our cradle-to-cradle products contribute to a healthy indoor climate and are VOC-free. In addition to having positive national and international material scores, our products contribute to building labels such as LEED, BREEAM, DTMB, and HQE. This underscores our commitment to looking beyond tiles. We look at the whole, at the surface, the space, and the user. In this way, Moser is making a positive contribution to society, the economy, and the planet for current and future generations.
We are now turning to a conversation on the role of chemistry for circularity. A future-proof circular economy starts with the selection of chemicals and materials that protect human health and the environment and have a positive impact on future product use and cycling. What does it mean to innovate for safer chemistry in a circular system? And how do we make a safe, then circular future a reality? Kevin Pollard joins me for this conversation today. Kevin is the head of Unit Exposure and Supply Chain at the European Chemicals Agency. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Christina, and thanks for inviting me today.
Thank you for being with us today. Kevin, what is the mission of ECHA and how is your work contributing to the EU chemical strategy for sustainability?
Thanks. Yeah, before I turn to the chemical strategy, maybe good to say a few words about our main mission at the moment, which is around what we call the integrated regulatory strategy. This is where most of our key performance indicators and our resources are invested at the current time, and essentially relates to, let's say, the smooth running of the REACH and CLP and other legislations under our current responsibility. So essentially, the integrated regulatory strategy, a big element is related to what we call the legacy of the past. A lot of existing chemicals that were already on the market when REACH was implemented. And ECHA's mission there is to identify potential chemicals of concern, propose regulatory action where needed, and otherwise identify this pool of substances of low priority for regulatory action. So of course it's more complex than that, but those are the main lines of our current work and our current mission. And really it's about clearing the chemical universe of chemicals of concern. And if you're interested to know more, we have web pages about our integrated regulatory strategy. Now, of course, in parallel to that, in particular during this year, we'll be making investments towards the chemical strategy. Most of what ECHA is doing is relating to the ongoing REACH and CLP revision. So, for example, we're supporting the Commission on criteria for potential new hazard classes under the chemical strategy. We're looking at options for extending generic risk management in some contexts. And we're also involved in a review or reform of some of the key REACH processes like evaluation, restriction, and authorization. So again, that's our principal focus is on the REACH review itself. Last but not least, we also have a small team working across ECHA to look more at the safe and sustainable by design aspect of the chemical strategy, also taking a look at what's being called the Sustainable Product Initiative, trying to understand better how that's foreseen to work and what can be ECHA's role in the future. And that's something that I'm involved with. And I can say more going forward.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, how do you see the current state of discussions on safe and sustainable by design for chemicals, materials, and products? So what are some of the enabling factors for a successful uptake of such an approach across industries?
Yeah, so I think there's still quite a lot to be clarified here in the fine detail, but many of the policy objectives, of course, from the strategy itself are already relatively clear. In terms of where we are right now, the Commission has been running what's called Working Group 2 of the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability. And this working group is focusing on the criteria that will be used for safety and sustainability by design. So it's been running for a few months now. Some draft criteria have been discussed, and the target is to have a final proposal for these safety and sustainability criteria during next year. Important to say that the more granular policy objectives, how much of these criteria would be, let's say, a carrot to foster innovation and reward green chemistries versus how much these criteria would be used more as a stick to require certain limits on hazardous constituents or other criteria is still under discussion within the working group and presumably will be discussed more widely going forward. But maybe just to give a few concrete examples, of course, on the safety side, we need to understand better the role of chemical hazard, chemical risk, whether safety by design will also include the need for methodologies for product designers. And then turning to the wider topic of sustainability, where of course ECHA has a bit less expertise at the current time, we're looking at dimensions like resource consumption, such as energy or water, CO2 emissions in relation to their impact on climate change. So these broader elements of sustainability, recyclability, repairability, it's all on the table, all being discussed in this working group. You mentioned enabling factors also. At least in our current understanding, it seems likely that the current REACH and CLP supply chains, also what's being legislated around the SCIP database, are likely to have a role in what's being called digital product passports. Although, again, this is still to be fully clarified, but we do see some potential synergy between the REACH supply chain and the concept of digital product passports.
And Kevin, you mentioned the SCIP database. So the SCIP database ensures information flows across whole life cycles of products and materials. And what is the intention behind the SCIP database? Which information does it contain, and how is it being implemented currently across sectors?
Yeah, a few questions there, and I'll do my best to answer. And of course, here I can be more concrete because, in fact, we've now launched the database, the submission systems quite some time ago, and we've recently gone live with the dissemination. So the database is already there. We've received something like 12 million notifications for an estimated 4 million articles on the European market. So a very concrete thing. But coming back to the intention of the database, couple of main elements there. This is to, first of all, put transparency on which SVHC, so candidate list substances of very high concern, I'll call them SVHC from now on, which ones are present in article-based products on the European market. This is aimed at supporting consumer choice. There may be contexts where consumers can choose products with or without SVHC, or at least they're making an informed decision to purchase a product like that. I'm sure the audience is very well aware that there are many, many products critical to the European economy containing SVHC. In addition to consumer choice, the database is aiming to support waste operators, recyclers, dismantlers, to make sure that they get clarity, not only on the content of SVHC, but depending on the quality of the submission, also in which component to the SVHC is located and in which materials. The idea, of course, is to avoid, let's call, regrettable recycling, that we can have more clean recycling streams, and that where SVHCs do need to be recycled, they can be done in a more controlled manner. So those are two main objectives towards consumers and waste operators. Also, it can be seen as a driver for substitution, encouraging product designers wherever possible to find alternate chemistries to minimize and ultimately avoid the use of SVHC. So multifaceted. Last but not least, I should mention also ECHA's taking a look how we can use the information towards our own regulatory processes in the context of whether certain articles might require a restriction, a ban, or some kind of limit on use. You asked me about what the database contained also. So I try and be concrete. Notifications range from what we would call a single or simple article. You can think of a screw, a ball bearing that may contain SVHC, but also under the concept of once an article, always an article, all the way through to what we call complex objects or complex assemblies. So I could use a simple example of a bicycle. So everything from, assuming there would be SVHC constituents, everything from the gear hub, the tire, the wheel, the handlebars, finally through to the final finished product, the bicycle. And you could have other examples, but maybe that's one that's easy to visualize. So when you're looking in the database, whether you're looking at a ball bearing or a bicycle, what you will see is essentially the same information. We have fields where notifiers can tell us what is the brand name, the model name, give us other identifiers like the barcode that can enable consumers, waste operators to identify the product. We show, of course, which SVHC or SVHCs are present in the article, and we've developed a hierarchy system that can display the components, where the SVHC is located, and also give information on what type of material. As you probably know, many recyclers are organized around material streams rather than product streams. So this is the type of information there. Now, of course, I'm talking about consumers and waste operators as the primary target, but important to emphasize the database is available to everyone. And in case you didn't have a look, I would encourage the audience to do so. Yeah, maybe just one more thing to mention on that. I already talked about how many submissions we got. There's different ways of submitting to the database. For smaller companies, they can use an online wizard. It's also possible to submit in Euclid, which is a structured format for many chemical legislations now. And last but not least, we've also enabled what we call a system-to-system notification. So here, companies can connect their own supply chain IT directly to our database and have automated submissions. So this is a step in the direction of digitalization. I think we'll return to that. And has been the method by which we've received the vast majority of submissions until now.
And which paradigm shift do you hope the SCIP database will drive, and how will it prepare our supply chains today for the future?
Yeah, let's see what type of paradigm shift or paradigm shifts we're looking at. I certainly think that digitalization itself is an ongoing one, and SCIP database and some elements of the chemical strategy may help to accelerate or foster that. But coming more to the regulatory context and the management of chemical risk, I would highlight that the SCIP database is the first digital database of SVHC in European products. It's providing information, as I said, in a fully transparent way, and could be seen as a further step towards digitalization of supply chain communication, not only for the business, but also for the regulatory affairs elements, which I'll say a bit more about that later. And then last but not least, I think it's really important to mention, we tend as authorities to think about control and ensuring safety, but it's good to remember that a big part of the raison d'etre of the chemical strategy is to foster innovation, competitiveness, and that the EU region can have a long-term market advantage by innovating these technologies. So again, I mentioned the role of driving substitution and informing product design. So whether the database itself is a paradigm shift, I don't know, but certainly it certainly has the potential to contribute in that direction.
And the EU's Sustainable Products Initiative suggests the creation of a digital product passport targeted at both industry and consumers. Why is EU-wide digitalization so important, and which benefits can such a passport bring for business and society?
Yeah, so as I already mentioned, the policy objectives at the more high level for the digital product passports are relatively clear, but we're still working with the Commission to try and understand a bit better the more granular and detailed implementation. So I can't say too much about that at the current time. What I would say, though, already from our previous work on the REACH supply chain, which is around the obligation for registrants to output safe use advice and to make an exposure scenario attached to their safety data sheet towards formulators of mixtures, and then ultimately all the way down the supply chain to end users, producers of articles, and so on. So here we saw a clear need, a clear appetite from industry for further digitalization. Companies have complex SAP-like supply chain inventories. They're procuring chemical ingredients from a wide variety of suppliers. There are changes in ingredients, changes in the hazard classification of ingredients that would trigger the need for an on-the-spot risk assessment, either top-down for REACH or bottom-up, let's say, for in relation to responsibilities under OSH. So the idea that there can be a manual, paper-based assessment every time there's a change in the hazard or the use of a substance or a material is just unrealistic. So companies have for several years started to invest in more automated systems for these regulatory based inventory transactions. And it was very clear to us, and that's documented in what we call the REACH Review Action 3 development plan, if people are interested to know more. The digitalization and a harmonized structured format for hazard characteristics and safe use advice are absolutely necessary, not only to get the current REACH supply chain better working, but we think also as a precursor to the digitalization that would be foreseen under the chemical strategy.
And Kevin, you mentioned a very concrete example of the bicycle, also very relevant, of course, to consumers. So how do you envision that the information in the SCIP database, or also in the digital product passport, will be used by consumers and will enable consumers to make more sustainable choices?
Yeah, I think I already, in terms of how SCIP contributes to consumers, the consumer choice, the transparency, plus, of course, the interests of consumer NGOs, some of which are also looking at making their own application based on the information in the SCIP database. For digital product passports, as I said, I cannot give a fully clear answer. But one thing I would highlight, it's good to keep in mind that SCIP only focuses on substances of very high concern. It's very clear and self-evident why we have such interest in SVHC, but there are other severe hazards. The Commission's working under the strategy on further developing the definition of substance of concern, most harmful chemical. So potentially under the digital product passports, we'll see an extended scope, that this equivalent information would be extended to other types of substances. Beyond that, hard to say at the current time, and I would look to the Commission for further clarity.
And Kevin, to conclude, looking into the future, what is your vision for a safer circular economy, and what will it take to make it a reality in the foreseeable future?
Well, in my own personal understanding, this is for me a relatively new topic, but certain things start to be pretty clear already. So from a manufacturing, importing perspective, there's a clear need for a very strong shift from the use of primary raw materials to secondary. Examples that are often given, rare earth metals that are being extracted from the ground in other regions of the world. We're dependent on them economically, and we may have some opportunity to actually recycle back some of these materials, reduce our reliance on other regions, and also have a greener footprint, let's say, a more safe and sustainable footprint towards using them. So again, a strong or massive shift towards secondary raw material production, and as I mentioned, repairability of existing products. And the question, I think, in particular from an eco perspective, is how to do that in a way where these materials will still be safe and that we're not recycling hazardous chemicals without being aware of that and without taking appropriate measures. Apart from this shift in material production, it's also very clear that substitution is key. And again, it's good to remember that it's important then that the Circular Economy Action Plan can also foster innovation of new materials. As I mentioned, in many cases, there are simply there's no viable alternative for some materials or chemistries for which our economy is fully reliant. So we need to balance here. On the one hand, it's important to control and manage risks, but on the other hand, where no viable alternative can be found, it's also important to create an environment that fosters innovation, the development of green chemistry, and so on. And then maybe last but not least, until or unless viable alternatives can be found, it's important, in my view, to have full transparency, at least sufficient to enable risk assessment by the relevant operators, and the generation of any necessary safe use advice towards customers or users. And maybe last but not least, we do believe that transparency, carefully done, and open data can also spark and foster innovation in its own right.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for sharing your valuable views and insights with us today.
Thanks for having me to talk here today again. Thank you.
A circular future requires us all to radically rethink and redefine products, systems, and business models. What does transformative innovation made for tomorrow require? And how do future-proof supply chain partnerships look like? Our second panel for the day will shed light on these questions. I'm joined for this discussion by Hans van Haast, CEO at Smith & Son, Nanja Hedal-Cloverbries, Project Lead Corporate Environmental Strategy at Novo Nordisk, and Jörg Witthöft, Senior Manager Remanufacturing at the ZF Group. Welcome and good to have you with us today.
Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. Let us briefly start with a context setting and an introduction to your organizations. Hans, what is Smith & Son as a company and what is your approach to sustainability?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, since last week, it is Royal Smith & Son. As you know, as a company, we already exist 200 years. Business, the company is still family owned. So I think we're a very sustainable company and have practiced and done things over the past 200 years to provide continuity for the company. And that is basically our most important strategic goal for the future. Continuity for the company, continuity for the family business, and that means that we continuously need to work on continuity for the market and the business we work in, the ladder value chain. So for us, sustainability is really at the core of our strategy, and we use the sentence creating a socially and environmentally sustainable ladder value chain together. And I think that in itself already says enough on what we are and what we are doing.
Thank you, Hans, and we will dive a little bit deeper into that, of course, throughout the discussion. Nanja, please tell us about Novo Nordisk and your Circular 4.0 environmental impact strategy.
Yes, thanks, Christina. So Novo Nordisk is a global pharmaceutical company headquartered in Denmark and with the ambition to defeat diabetes and other chronic diseases. We developed a new environmental strategy a couple of years ago that we call Circular Zero. It has the ambition to have zero environmental impact. And the way that we want to achieve that is through circular economy. So having the circular economy and the circular mindset as the basis of what we do. And we are actually looking across the full value chain, looking at how we can make circular suppliers, how we can collaborate with our suppliers to take them on board the journey that we are on. We are, of course, also working with us as a company, not only in production, but also all the other things that we do, what we purchase, what we have activities, business flights, and so on. And then also you can say where we've really done a lot of new stuff is on circular products, and that is also, of course, a key topic for us today.
And we also have a third sector represented here today. Jörg, what does the ZF Group do and what is the group's approach to sustainability?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, ZF is a big supplier for the automotive industry, and we produce roundabout in all over the world in 42 countries in the world, and 150,000 staff members all over the world. In 2020, around about 32 billion our products around the automotive industry, just gearboxes, power converters, so much more. And our target for the sustainability are that we would like to change from now till 2030 with 100% efficiency. And also we would like to change with the whole company till 2040 to 100% neutrality CO2 status.
Thank you, Jörg, for this introduction. And let's dive a little bit deeper on your circularity and innovation approaches. Hans, how are you innovating for sustainable leather alternatives at Smith & Son? And which themes are you currently looking at in particular?
Okay. Now, I think in essence, it is very simple. Leather is a byproduct of the food industry. And if we don't turn that byproduct, the hide, into a useful article, you basically need to landfill it, or you need to burn it, and you're wasting it. So how we look at sustainability and also circularity is take that already material from a bio-based origin and then turn it into a leather article and help turn it into a leather article, which at the end of its life and also the byproducts it produces during the transformation from the hide to a leather article, to close all those loops and all those circles. Now, and that means that you should not put things into the hide which later on have a bad effect on the environment or on workers or on wherever the article ends up, the end consumers. Now, the themes, I think, are quite logical. Looking at bio-based alternatives for the petrochemical-based products we're using today. But also, I think an important theme is to look at alternative tanning agents. Chrome salts are still the workhorse of the industry. That chrome, at the end of the life of the leather article, ends up in the environment. So replacing the chrome again with better alternatives is a key theme of our research. And the way we're doing that is we've created a new company recently, kind of a startup company within Smith & Son, and it's called NERA, New Era. And in that company, which we manage as a startup, very agile, with different talents, with different competences, in addition to the ones you need for the leather value chain, we really are having and really trying hard to have an impact on creating circularity in the chain.
Mm-hmm. And Smith & Son has been on the Cradle to Cradle certified journey also for a while. So you hold Cradle to Cradle certified material health certificates for tanning and for retanning agents. And
Right.
could you share a little bit about this journey, what motivated the journey, and in particular how the framework also has helped inform your innovation process?
Yeah. You're right. Actually, this product fits in our new startup company, NERA. And when we started from scratch with this company and with this product, we basically said we need to do this differently right from the beginning. And certification, the material health certification of this product for us was very important, and not so much to have the certificate and put it somewhere on a website or on a product label, but I think the framework really helps to answer and to think about the product in ways a chemical producer not necessarily has done in the past. So it's kind of like putting a mirror in front of you, getting a wide range of questions and really thinking through and really articulating what is your product, where is it good, where is improvement possible, and especially that aspect to see where you still can make steps going forward is and was extremely helpful to us.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, it's really a continuous improvement framework. Yeah. Jörg, ZF Group has been the first automotive supplier in the world to obtain cradle-to-cradle certification. Can you share with us what was the motivation behind that journey for you, and what are some of the key lessons learned?
Yes, thank you. Yes, right. We start very early with system remanufacturing from products. We start in 1963, and our motivation was we would like to thinking how we can looking for the benchmark in the industry for this. And our first problem was we looking left and right, we're looking to competitors, we're looking to suppliers and also to customers, and everyone has the same problem. They have a system, maybe own system from customer or the own system from the supplier, but nobody have an international system for all the same, and we have all the same points inside. In the cradle-to-cradle standard, we find a system for the international standard, very clear and very easy to explain. And we thinking in our case how we can looking for a good benchmark with other companies, industry companies with the same or with a similar same branch. And in this case, we looking forward and we find the cradle-to-cradle standard. And from the 5 points we need for the cradle-to-cradle standard, we have maybe round about 4 full, and 1 is not really full for us. We had only the 100% electricity. It's not green electricity, is not full in our case, and we looking forward and we try to change the system. And our first product was one product, pressure plate, clutch part, and we certificated with standard in gold, and we are very happy about, and that was a journey for us to start the next product. And now we are more or less have all products and from our company certificated, and that was a big point for us to learn about the system and also to find a benchmark in the branch, in the industry, to can looking left or right and looking for us what can be improved, that we can be better in a range with other competitors.
Mm-hmm. And how has the framework helped you to make, your product development, but potentially also production and the new business models that you put into place? How has this framework helped you to arrive at that, to inform on that, and to really help you being fit for the future in this regard?
Yeah, it's not too easy to answer with one short sentence. The problem was when you start with a cradle-to-cradle system, or when you start with a remanufacturing, you have in all cases the same situation. Some development department produce one product for one life circle. And when in our case we start very early, 1963, I told you before, we start to thinking about maybe after the first life, we would like give the part a second or a third life, or maybe more. We would like to thinking in closed loops and not for, I think, the rubbish box and not for waste. And our thinking was we must talk with our development department about what can we do, what can we change in the product, that the product have the same quality standard, the same life circle, and we can improve the product for the next or for the third life circle. And that was a big point. We must clear a long time before we start with the construction office and with the development office, and we talk about and we find a good agreement together to come up on the next level. And today we not discuss about why we have a second or third life in our product. We talk about how we can get a second or third life in our product.
Mm-hmm. Great, and we will dive a little bit deeper into your supply chain also in the further dialogue. Nanya, Novo Nordisk recently became the first company in the world to have cradle-to-cradle certified product according to our latest standard version 4. And you're also the first company in the healthcare industry to hold a certified product under our program. So what has motivated this ambition that you are clearly demonstrating with this achievement? And what were some of the lessons learned for you from this journey?
Yeah, so first of all, we're of course really proud of being front runners in this field. I think the motivation is, you could say, in terms of our packaging, our cartons, which is such a product that we have certified now. We needed to understand a bit more about our value chain and also be sure that what is actually in the product is not harming the environment. So that was actually also the starting point, saying, we don't really know what's in it. And we've learned a lot from this process, working with the supply chain, and also I would say it's been some hard work along the lines of this new certification. But I think it also proves that this is a very ambitious certification. And some of the learnings that we have had along the way is that we can actually, work with suppliers on this. Some of them are more willing to collaborate than others, but also that we get a better understanding of where is it that we have the soft spots, where is it that we should set more requirements to them to make them move in the same direction as us.
And has the process in some way helped you to innovate the supply chain of your carton box? And maybe a second question, what are your plans to potentially take it beyond packaging or to additional packaging to your actual products?
Yeah, so right now we are evaluating also based on the learnings that we've had, what is the good thing about this? What is it that we can do with this? I would say as such, we haven't changed a lot just within this first certification. I think the key learning here was actually to have the certification and find out how we document what we need to document and so on. But I think there's a lot of things that we can do in terms of setting requirements to our suppliers now that we know what would be the future requirements. And then also looking into, you would say, what is it? There's a lot of legislation coming up. There's a lot of REACH legislation, for example, and right now we are actually lacking a system to really, you could say, prove or document that we are within the legislation. That and that is where we can start building this into the agreements we make with suppliers, and actually documenting that we are even ahead of legislation on these products. So we are looking into, what can we do more on our packaging products, but also looking at, what are the opportunities within, for example, our medical devices, where there are currently some restrictions in terms of how far we could get. Also, being a pharmaceutical company with a lot of legislation on product safety and so on, there's some limitations to how far we can go, but we really want to push this in another direction. And also, I think the Cradle-to-Cradle certification is a good way of documenting this. Also, that being said, we do not have anyone requiring us to do this. We don't have customers as such, like the authorities of a country that would actually set requirements for us to do anything yet. But I think we will see that in the future, and we want to be prepared for the future.
You all have spoken to the supply chain, to the importance of collaboration. And Hans, how are you connecting the dots as a chemical manufacturer with the supply chain, with the value chain, with the customers that you are having? And how are you really pushing this new era for leather manufacturing with your partners?
Yeah. I think collaboration is probably the most important thing these days, because yes, you can make a product sustainable in your own company, but you really need to make a whole value chain sustainable. So I think collaboration throughout the value chains, really starting with the end consumer and then all the way back, is an essential thing. Now, In the leather value chain, I think we're fortunate that there is a number of quite good, excellent organizations which bring different parties together. There is the Leather Working Group, there is the ZDHC organization, there is the Sustainable Leather Foundation, there is Leather Naturally, and I think all in their own areas, what these organizations try to do, what these industry organizations try to do, is work on sustainability. So obviously, we play. We are not only participants, but we also play key roles in each of these organizations to connect the dots and to really not only find parties to collaborate with, but also be the catalyst for collaboration. The leather value chain is extremely fragmented with a lot of participants. There is some consolidation happening, which I think is good, but the industry will continue to be fragmented, and thus these type of platforms, which and industry organizations, which I described, are extremely important. We now also have with NERA, with our new company, the approach we're taking is also to offer knowledge and information via social media, via our website. And what we've experienced over the past 2 years, that also stimulates a lot of cooperation. Because knowledge can be the catalyst for cooperation as well. So you need to be open, you need to be willing to share, and you can always look at the other to start. But basically, we have decided to start, and we see a very good effect from that. And that is next to that you need to have a good product and a good solution and something innovative. But that in itself is not enough. We really need to collaborate. Now, recently, a lot of companies, a lot of brands are talking about LCAs, life cycle analysis. A life cycle analysis can only help on an article or on a product, a consumer product, can only be done in the proper way if there is good collaboration throughout the chain. So hence there's all kinds of stimuli at the moment to really get this collaboration going, and we're more than willing to, and we're actively participating in that.
Thank you. Also the automotive supply chain is quite complex, and as part of your efforts, as part of your Cradle to Cradle certified journey, how have you seen your supply chains evolve downstream and upstream?
Yeah, thank you. A little bit, let me look a little bit back. We start very early with our business, and in this case, in this time, nobody looked about remain, nobody looked about CO2, nobody looked about waste really. And in the last years, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, customers as also suppliers looking to these cases, and our customer, for example, knocked a lot of times on our door and say, oh, we would like to have more products, remanufacturing products without a lot of bad carbon footprint. They like with less carbon, with less CO2, and they like a little bit more clean products. And when you have a part with maybe 1 or 2 life cycles or 3, you have a guarantee for a very good carbon footprint. And that was also a reason that a customer from us knocked on our door and said, please give us more remanufacturing parts, maybe more as we can. We needs the old cores, the old parts, used parts back to our company. And then we talk about around about 40 till 50 tons every day we get, and we bring back maybe around about 80 till 95% from this material back in the next life cycle from the next product. And that is for the customer a good business case, and also for us a good business case. And when I look into our supplier, same, when we not have our cradle-to-cradle system and the framework from the cradle system, we never looking before about what is really important for us and what is toxic inside the product we buy from our suppliers. But now with the cradle-to-cradle certificate, we need, I think we need non-toxic materials inside our product, and then we give this product our customers. A customer has the same wish, and that's a little bit the journey. We sit in the middle, but for us, very important. We have also the whole line with clean material, with 100% green energy, and also our customers need the same. And when we have closed this loop, I think we make a good business in the whole business, in the whole industry system.
Thank you, Jörg, for sharing this experience. Nanya, you are very clearly, with your company, spearheading circularity in the healthcare industry. What is the status in general on circularity in the healthcare industry? What are the latest types of discussions there? And where do you see the biggest challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, so you could say it's still maturing within the pharma industry. We do have some of these discussions also, as I said, like in Novo Nordisk, moving to the product level. So not only about how we produce our medicines and devices, but also, what happens with these products also after use. For example, looking into how is this thrown out at the patient's home? Can we set up take-back programs and so on? Like Novo Nordisk is now piloting a device take-back program in Denmark, and we're also looking into, you could say, industry-wide solutions on this problem. Of course, plastic is an issue. There's a lot of plastic consumption within hospitals and healthcare in general. Also, some of it is single-use equipment. So that is, of course, a big challenge. I think it will never be, you could say, a key selling point for our products that some sort of environmental certification or improvement, because what we really need to bring to the patient is a better life, right, with better treatment. But that being said, I think we as an industry needs to also take the responsibility to move towards a lower environmental impact of our products. And I think we also need to somehow, you could say, be fit for the future in terms of what would be future requirements from our customers and from authorities in general. For example, on the plastic issue, we know that plastic taxes and different instruments are being set up on plastic. So how will that hit the pharma industry in the future? And in terms of circular economy, I think there are some key drivers there that enables us to actually make some changes in terms of looking at the raw materials we're using. Can they be renewable? Looking at recycling production waste internally, and also, as I said, taking care of the products when they become waste. And we do see a movement towards more thinking in terms of circular economy, but it's still, as I said, that there's not a lot of requirements from our customers, and that means that everything we do, it might be a little bit difficult to go back to top management and demonstrate that this is a good idea and this is the perfect business case. So it's more about taking the responsibility and believing in that being a sustainable business in the long run is also about taking environmental responsibility and believing that also some of our shareholders actually value this, and first of all, simply taking the responsibility because we can.
And if we give to our audience a little bit a future perspective, a vision for the next years, Nanya, how do you see could the healthcare industry really integrate a sustainable business model? What would have to happen? What could be the key change there to make this happen?
I think there are some technological gaps right now in terms of, for example, having recycled materials that are suitable for medical devices. That's just a good example. I think that we want to move in the right direction, but we also need the technology to develop. That's the same with taking back our products. We need the recycling technology to actually exploit these resources. And I do see also that with time we will maybe also push a bit more to have some of these requirements and make sure that the things that we do for the sake of the environment is also valued by our different stakeholders, also authorities across the world. And I do believe that when we see more governance taking action on climate change and plastic issues, at some point in time, hopefully, that will also mean that we set higher requirements to the pharmaceutical industry. Of course, that is somehow already happening, but not really at the product level yet. So that would be what I would hope to see in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this vision, Anja. Jörg, if we look at the mobility sector, what is your vision for a sustainable, ideally carbon positive mobility sector?
Yeah. I like a little bit looking for the next month or the next end of the year. When you ask me on the 24th December, I would like to say, okay, maybe we can give Santa Claus a wish. I would like to say, please Santa Claus, give me more examples for the industry, more best practices. Not so much good examples. The reason that we have a lot of people say, oh, we don't like to try. And please give me also more incentives maybe from the government to improve the business. And also maybe for customers who have the same state of mind. And I think we need more design for remanufacturing examples. When we start very early with thinking about circular economy, we start to produce and we production and we have the design manufacturing as the first step and save so much money and also save so much waste for the next generation product. And I think we must change the thinking about waste. Waste is, in my opinion, not a type of word for the materials, used materials. When we change the waste to the maybe used materials, we can save so much raw materials. Raw materials not so much in Europe or in Germany, more in the other world. But when we not take control of the raw materials of the world, so we must look for the material we can use the circle. That's more or less my last wish on this point. For the future, we must think in closed loops or better closed material circles and maybe the word waste with maybe used material.
Well, thank you, Jörg, for this very ambitious vision that you have painted for us. And Hans, the final word over to you. What will it take really to make environmentally and socially responsible leather value chain a reality by 2025?
Yeah. That is a very good, but also a very difficult question, and I can give an obvious answer to that, which then would be you need perseverance, you need dedication, you need hard work, but that's almost everywhere and for everything these days. Mm-hmm. I think to really answer your question, what we really need is an informed consumer. Still, a lot of people think that cattle is raised to make a leather bag. They don't see it as a byproduct of the food industry, and that is why some consumers these days prefer to buy a plastic or man-made material bag instead of a leather bag. And so I would put on number one, what is needed, an informed consumer, one who not only thinks about the wallet and how to buy more, but also takes into account that we need to take care of the planet. And then cheap is not necessarily better. I think on the contrary. And I think if as a ladder value chain, we can really grab the attention of the end consumer, thereby, of course, engaging the brands and the OEMs, and then really clean up some of the practices from the past in the ladder value chain, then I think we're on the right path. But without really good understanding at the consumer level, I think it will be tough, and that's also the reason why we spend a lot of time and effort on educating and engaging brands and end consumers.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to all three of you for the leadership that you are really taking in your respective sectors. And thank you, Hans, Nanja, and Jörg, for sharing your valuable insights and perspectives today with us.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Another company that makes products for tomorrow already today is Troldect, a Danish manufacturer of acoustic panels. Troldect is a sponsor to our event, and we will hear in a brief video more about the Cradle-to-Cradle certified leadership journey. After the video, I will be in conversation with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
Troldect's business strategy is based on the sustainable cradle-to-cradle concept. The vision behind Cradle-to-Cradle is a world without waste. A world where we, as manufacturers, design our products for the circular economy. Our range of Troldect acoustic panels for ceilings and walls has been Cradle-to-Cradle certified since 2012, and we are constantly working to make further progress within all 5 certification criteria. Let's look at some of the milestones we have achieved and what's next. We have converted our production to renewable energy, wind power and biofuels. Our own factory is thus run on almost 100% carbon-neutral energy. We have a single Cradle-to-Cradle certificate covering the entire series of Troldect cement-bonded wood wool panels in both nature and painted in standard colors. As a result of the certification process, we know that our acoustic panels contain no harmful substances and that they can thus safely be returned to the biological cycle. Offcuts from our factory are returned to the technical cycle. Our cement supplier, Aalborg Portland, uses the offcuts in its cement production. The goal is to scale the scheme to include the use of end-of-life Troldect acoustic panels in cement production. We have achieved both FSC and PEFC certification, which means that all the wood used in Troldect acoustic panels is certified according to leading standards for sustainable forestry. Now, what's next? At the moment, our acoustic solutions are Cradle-to-Cradle certified at gold or platinum level within 4 criteria. And for the 5th criterion, material health, we have now almost come far enough for Troldect as a whole to advance from silver to gold certification. Up until now, the paints we use for our painted Troldect acoustic panels have contained small amounts of anti-rot biocide. Without biocide, we were unable to reuse overspray at our painting facility, and that would have resulted in additional waste of about 200,000 litres of paint a year. Together with our paint suppliers, we have now arrived at a new and durable recipe containing no biocide, which means that gold certification is within reach. We are also working to reduce the carbon footprint of the cement that is key to the natural strength and fire safety properties of our acoustic panels. We are currently experimenting with FutureCem, a type of cement with 30% lower carbon emissions compared to ordinary cement. In a dialogue with the Danish government, Aalborg Portland has committed to reducing its carbon emissions by 70% by 2050 and 30% by 2030. This will significantly improve our carbon footprint as cement accounts for almost all emissions. Trolltect is today one of the leading and preferred solutions for creating a good acoustic environment in healthy and sustainable buildings. With our strategic approach to the circular economy, we make a difference for people and for the environment, now and in the future.
We are now turning to a conversation that will look at the state of the circular transition across industries and the business case for the circular economy. What does it mean to overcome value chain barriers, and how can we partner for making a circular business model the mainstream approach? Brendan Edgerton joins me for this dialogue. Brendan is the Director Circular Economy at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Welcome, Brendan.
Hello, Christina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. Brendan, please describe the mission of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and which circularity programs you're currently working on.
Of course, happy to. So the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, a nonprofit organization convening the leading businesses committed to a sustainable future. And our vision is a world in which 9 billion people living well within the means of the planet. And our mission is to see more successful businesses be more sustainable, and vice versa, more sustainable businesses be more successful. And we operate currently under 6 different programs that we see as necessary system transformations to achieve that vision. Climate and energy, food and nature, cities and mobility, and what I look over the circular economy program. And within the circular economy program today, we have a few different projects, including on plastics and packaging and electronics, but our longest running program is Factor 10. And this brings together over 35 companies from over a dozen industries to work on various challenges that they face systemically, but also within specific value chains.
And you mentioned Factor 10, so which main systemic and value chain barriers are you specifically tackling under this project, and how?
Yeah, so there's 2 systemic barriers that we're addressing. One is on metrics and the other on policy, and then a value chain specific project around buildings, design and construction. So maybe I'll start with the buildings project. Within that, we are developing with the World Green Building Council the business case for circular construction, helping real estate development and finance understand the very real economic impact that more circular design can create for them. On the policy side, we're convening messages from our most progressive members to understand what would help them in the policy and regulation sphere move faster towards circular economy. And we've actually just recently published a policy briefing on that. And then lastly, one of the longest running projects under Factor 10 is on metrics. And here we've developed the circular transition indicators to help establish a common language for business to measure their circular performance and to communicate that externally.
Mm-hmm. And when we'll come to the circular transition indicators later on in our conversation, but let's first look at the sectors, because your projects, your programs are cross-sectorial in nature. And in your experience, which sectors do you consider most crucial to get on board to accelerate the circular transition? And from your projects, from your experiences, are there any particular sectors that currently stand out for you in terms of circularity leadership?
Yeah, a good question. I don't know if there's a few sectors that are most crucial or that are standing out more than others. I think what we're seeing is that depending on which what you're trying to achieve with circular economy will determine what sectors you might want to focus on. So for example, we look at 3 different imperatives as WBCSD: climate change, nature loss, and inequality. How can we drive our work programs to address those imperatives that we face today? And if you think about it, circular economy is a tool to achieve those objectives in the end. So with climate change, if you're thinking about how do we have the biggest impact with circularity, you might be thinking about buildings, automotive or mobility, or waste management, as we hear more and more coming out about methane emissions. If your focus is more on the nature side, you might be thinking about mining and extraction, plastics and pollution and packaging, but then also agriculture and the bioeconomy that feeds into that. And then lastly, if your focus is more around inequality, you might be thinking about electronics, particularly on end of life handling or extraction again, textiles and apparel. So depending on what your focus is in terms of what impact you're trying to drive with circularity, you might be looking at different industries. Now, when thinking about who is standing out from the rest of the pack, again, it's not so much individual sectors. What we're seeing is there are leading companies within each sector that are kind of pushing the envelope further, whether it be cement, automotive, packaging, electronics, apparel. We see these progressive companies stepping out, making bold commitments and taking actions to address those. And those companies really fall into two different categories. You have the large multinational companies with visionary leadership. Their executives, their CEO, they get it. They see not only the value economically in circular economy, but also understand that there are very real environmental social benefits to it if thought systemically. And then the other type are around startups and more disrupting companies that come in with circularity at the core of what they do. And with that, different value proposition for customers, they can also shake up the market quite a bit.
And Brandon, you mentioned already the circular transition indicators. So which role does measuring circularity play in accelerating the transition?
So, one of the first things to establish a level playing field is to make sure everyone has the same language and the same set of rules. So, going back to 2017, within WBCSD, our member companies started coming to us more and more about what is circular economy, how do we get started, what does it mean for our business, and then ultimately, how do we know how we're doing? And what we found is that if business can align on circular metrics, they can make more informed strategic decisions. If they had a quantitative and an objective basis to make these decisions based on, that they would begin decoupling their financial performance from the resource consumption that they have, and then they'd be able to set bolder targets and ambitions. So we got to work with our companies and develop the circular transition indicators, as I mentioned, a methodology for companies to measure their circular performance, regardless of industry, value chain position, or region, and published the first version in 2018. Since then, we published the second one last year in 2020, the second version earlier this year in 2021, and now we're at work on version 3.0. And with that, the framework is publicly available, and that was important for us to try and make that so that everyone can use it. But then we felt we wanted to assist that process even more, so we partnered with Circular IQ to offer the CTI tool, which is a free tool that really anyone can sign up for and use to facilitate that CTI process.
Mm-hmm. And for the development of the circular transition indicators, you have also aligned with leading circularity organizations like our institute. So where do we see the power of collaboration, not only in the supply chain, but also with like-minded peer organizations?
Yeah, so very on, it was clear to not only WBCSD, but to our member companies that we will not be successful in driving scale on circular metrics in a common language unless we brought everyone together who was critical in the conversation. And we know as WBCSD, we don't have all the expertise or perspectives that are needed to get that buy-in. So we are purely a business-driven organization, but it's going to take other stakeholders to make sure that these metrics are credible. So we reached out to the organizations who we knew had powerful voices and were well respected in the space, and we knew could help us ensure that whatever we developed was going to be as robust and honest as possible. So as you mentioned, this is where the Institute comes in. It was certainly one of the first organizations we thought of wanting to have at the table. We were thrilled when you all accepted. And so, collaboration is going to be critical for us to achieve this vision. And it's not, just for companies, but also NGOs and for governments, for that matter. And it's going to require some self-awareness of what we can do, what we can't do, some humility in understanding and being okay with that, and then ultimately recognition of who we need to work with to get the job done. And until we're able to put our egos aside, whether we sit, wherever we sit, and demonstrate true collaboration, we'll be building adjacent bridges and each diminishing the value of the previous one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Brendan, let's look a little bit at the economic dimension as well. You related to that already in some earlier statements. So in your view, which is the most immediate business case for the circular economy today, and how do you foresee it evolving during the next years?
So, I think one of the first business cases you might think of is around risk mitigation. However, it's not always as straightforward as that. So again, some while back in responding to those questions that our members have, we produced a document called the 8 Business Cases for Circular Economy. And this was out of a stakeholder engagement process that we learned, what were the drivers that companies were referencing in making that business case internally to their leadership. And we found that those 8 business cases fell across 3 different categories. The first is on accelerating growth, where we found companies were creating new products and generating revenue from using circular economy as innovation, even generating more revenue from existing products, but selling them in a slightly different way. Of course, one of the first things that companies, one of the first business cases that companies identify is around reducing costs. And obviously this is diverting things from landfill or resource efficiency strategies. But as it gets more elaborate, you'll see the second category happen, and enhancing competitiveness. And this is not so much a direct financial impact, but we see that it strengthens relationships with customers and employees. It differentiates companies from its competition, but it also allows it to integrate circularity into its core ethos and demonstrate through its business strategy how it can meet its environmental strategy and or mission. And then most immediate business case is going to ultimately depend on the industry value chain position and regional regulations, of course. And even along the same value chain, you'll probably see different business cases. As you might see within plastic and packaging, for example, very high, the beginning end of the value chain, it's certainly a risk mitigation discussion. In the middle of the value chain, you can look at it as kind of a combination of risk and opportunity, with brand owners certainly trying to protect their image. But then on the other hand, how can we look at alternative business models to give the consumer what they're looking for in a more effective way? Then lastly, at the end of the value chain with waste management, this is a huge opportunity for them to play a bigger role in closing the loop and bringing those materials back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Brendan, I think we all have the ambition, the vision of really scaling the circular economy. What will have to happen in your experience to scale the circular economy into a mainstream business approach within this decade?
Yeah, I think there's 3 things that need to happen here. The first is the greenhouse gas protocol needs to be updated to account for avoided emissions and for circular solutions. Right now, it's the focus is on scope 3, and it should be, but a big part of that is still missing in how we account for more circular solutions and the reduced emissions associated with it. The second is on the NDCs that countries are publishing now. We need to see more NDCs that include circular economy at the core of what they're driving, as opposed to a auxiliary type of element, and recognize what could be that 40% of that emissions gap that we need to close through circularity. And then lastly, what I really like to see is a TRFD. So aligning investors and companies on how to identify, assess, and mitigate the risks associated with linear resource consumption. The R obviously standing for resources here, but I think as we see with TCFD, it's been a very effective mechanism for starting the conversation there. With TNFD for nature underway right now, I don't think it's too long before we see a TRFD and really bring this linear risk discussion to the fore.
And Brendan, to conclude, World Business Council for Sustainable Development has a Vision 2050, time to transform, in place. So how would the world under this vision look like by mid-century?
I mentioned in the very beginning, our vision is for a world in which 9 billion people can live well within the means of the planet by 2050. And breaking that down, living well means that everyone's dignity and rights are respected, that basic needs are met, and equal opportunities are available for everyone. On the living within planetary boundaries side, that is making sure that global warming is stabilized at no more than 1.5 degrees. Natural systems are protected, restored, and used sustainably, but it also means that societies have developed sufficient adaptive capacity to build and maintain resilience in a healthy, regenerative Earth system. So in this document, we outline 9 different pathways from energy, transportation, mobility, living spaces, products, and materials, where you really find a lot of the circular economy content. But circular economy touches on almost all of these different pathways. And it's going to be important for us to think about it, how we can use it as a tool and mechanism to achieve this Vision 2050, and not necessarily achieving a 100% circular economy as the main goal.
Thank you very much, Brandon, for this very insightful conversation and for sharing your perspective with us today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Across all generations and regions, we are observing increasing consumer awareness and interest in sustainability and circularity topics. Which role do consumers play in the shift towards a circular future? How can we tap into sustainable purchasing and evolving consumer values? And how can we make it easier for consumers to choose better products? I'm joined for this timely debate by 3 panelists. Catherine Russell, Vice President Global Marketing Calvin Klein at Coty. Dhruv Agarwal, Senior Director, Global Innovation, Sustainability, Product Development at Contour Brands. Janine Weitz-Bühler, Director Brand and Product at Kalida. Hello, and glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Christina.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to be here.
Let us start with a context setting and an introduction to your companies. Catherine, can you tell us about Coty and how, in general, you address the topic of sustainability?
Yes, thank you. I'm honored to be part of your panel today discussing a subject so close to my heart. And at Coty, our CEO has put sustainability at the core of the company's strategy, making it one of our 6 strategic pillars and the ultimate driver of innovation. Beauty That Lasts is our strategic framework for sustainability. It outlines our social, environmental, and ethical ambitions and aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is anchored across 3 pillars: beauty of our people, our product, and our planet. At Coty, sustainability is at the ultimate driver of innovation and is now central to our development process through the creation of the Beauty That Lasts Index, which includes sustainability criteria from the beginning of new product development across both the formula and packaging. As part of our strategy, we're looking at sustainability and circularity in our product development with the choice of materials and the energy we use. All of our manufacturing sites and distribution centers are now using 100% renewable electricity. We've also introduced circularity in our ingredient choice with carbon capture technology. We've partnered with LanzaTech to accelerate product sustainability. Thanks to this partnership, Coty will be the first company to use sustainable ethanol made from captured carbon emissions in our fragrance products. This groundbreaking partnership is a critical step towards our ambition to become a more circular business. It is the ultimate example of upcycling. We will begin incorporating carbon captured ethanol into our fragrance manufacturing process with the goal of having the majority of our fragrance portfolio using ethanol sourced from carbon capture by 2023.
Thank you, Catherine, for this sustainability overview. Dhruv, can you tell us more about Contour Brands and your aspiration to be a sustainability leader?
Thank you, Christina. Thanks for a lot over here. We are Contour Brands, and Contour Brands is a parent company for some of the iconic denim brands of the world, Wrangler and Lee. We have been in the wardrobes of all our consumers for a long time, in combined history of 200 years. of Lee and Wrangler, that speaks a lot. So in terms of Contour Brands and Lee and Wrangler, we've been on our sustainability journey for decades. It's not like we just started, and we've been working on this journey for a long time. For us, sustainability is all about combined comprehensive approach. We are looking at every aspect of how we make the garment. That includes all the raw materials, that includes the process of manufacturing, that also includes end of life of the garment. So we look at everything comprehensively. We are looking in terms of what raw materials to be used. We go through the scientific analysis like life cycle assessment for the raw materials to understand what raw materials are better for us in terms of whether it is CO2 emissions, or whether it is a water usage, or whether it is anything else from the worker well-being. We look at all those aspects. Same thing when we are making the garment or making the fabric. We're looking at every aspect of the process. So for us, sustainability is basically a comprehensive approach, and it is a journey for us. So in Contour's definition of sustainability, what we call it is a dynamic process of continuous improvement. So it's a dynamic process, a dynamic journey. Basically, it is not static; it's going to continuously improve. And we have defined this in terms of 6 goals. Some of those goals are related to the materials, chemistry, climate, energy, worker well-being, and those kind of things. So we are very much looking to see how we improve every step, every moment in this journey over year. So I think that's the sustainability journey for us. And we are very much embedded in all our innovations coming through this sustainability journey.
Thank you, Dhruv, for this overview. Janine, tell us more about Kalida and how sustainability is part of your business strategy.
Kalida is a Swiss-born brand and a leader in premium underwear, nightwear, and loungewear. We were established in 1941, so having over 80 years of experience in the industry now. And really from the very beginning, so since 1941, an ultra high quality promise is within our genes. That's really the brand what Kalida stands for. And therein also a lot of consumers trust. So we are coming from a quite high level in quality and comfort. And that's saying this actually, it was a kind of an automatically led that brought us to a wider sustainability approach, because of course a lot of things changed over the last decade, and only bring the best quality into the market is simply not enough anymore. So this is why we defined a new holistic approach for us to see the future agenda. This is named, it's a kind of a roof under which we are bringing all of our engagement and investments together. Of course, it's about products and materials, it's about the environment, it's about governance, it's about employees, and it's about community engagement. So sustainability is definitely embedded in our business model and in our whole strategy.
Catherine, if we go a little bit deeper into the Calvin Klein brand, you've spoken to Coty's sustainability strategy. How do you apply this strategy at Calvin Klein fragrances level, and how are you driving positive innovation for that brand?
Yes, well, we see growing demand from consumers and retailers for more sustainable products. Gen Z and millennial consumers already consider sustainability to be a key factor in their purchasing decisions. And the importance of sustainability will only increase in the coming years, including the cosmetics and personal sector. But there's one clear imperative for beauty business to respond to those consumer interests and priorities. Across our portfolio of iconic brands, we're spearheading clean and natural revolution. Our Beauty That Lasts index has been pioneered for the CK Everyone fragrance in particular. It's our first fragrance in the portfolio that was crafted from the conception to be a clean fragrance. It's Calvin Klein's most clean and environmentally conscious fragrance ever released by the fashion house. And CK Everyone is formulated with naturally derived ingredients and alcohol, certified as vegan, and comes in a folding carton that contains 30% post-consumer recycled materials. It's the first prestige fragrance to achieve a material health certificate at the silver level from Cradle to Cradle. And we are so proud of that achievement. At Coty, we believe that sustainability is the driver for innovation, and we're focused on creating outstanding products that are truly clean and green.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Catherine. And how has the Cradle to Cradle certified framework helped to make this innovation ambition a reality for Calvin Klein fragrances?
With the Cradle to Cradle Material Health Certificate for CK Everyone Eau de Toilette, Cradle to Cradle gave us the framework to reinforce Coty's and Calvin Klein's commitment to the sustainability platform. We regard this as a great achievement and of which we are very proud. So thank you so much. The methodology provided us and our suppliers with a trusted means of assessing, optimizing, and verifying their product chemistries for safety and the environment. As an example, we had to use ingredients which were part of the C2C agreed list for the sector. And in the future, we're developing new products targeting a full certification with the objective of building a better business while making an even greater positive contribution towards societal, ethical, and environmental change within the beauty industry. We're evaluating our environmental impact across the value chain, including our production, but also our full supply chain, looking at carbon emissions, water impact, and the use of renewable energy. Just like CK Everyone was the first prestige fragrance to achieve a material health certificate at the silver level, Coty's Lancaster sun care brand is the first ever sun care brand to be awarded that prestigious material health certificate at a silver level. So it's really spreading across fragrance and skincare within Coty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really wonderful to see that scaling within Coty across brands. Dhruv, which approach are you taking to innovate products for sustainability? And how do you combine a 200-year heritage that you have with future-proof innovation?
Oh, Christina, this is an interesting question. You know, our approach is guided by our customers and consumer needs. You know, it's the most important thing. We are trying to meet our customers and consumer needs. We want to provide our consumers the products they love and they love to wear, you know. And the second thing over here is the Contour's purpose. The purpose of Contour is to be the common thread that inspires people to live with passion and confidence. That's the most important thing, that common thread that inspires people to live with passion and confidence. I think the purpose guides us to look for from all angles, including sustainable innovations. And denim has been in existence for hundreds of years and has been in wardrobes of everyone in this consumer world. I remember one data point somebody told me a few years back. He said that 50% of the population at any moment of time is wearing one form or other of denim. That's an interesting data point. Like 50% of population at one point, at any moment, you know. So that tells you that it's a ubiquitous product, you know, it's everywhere. And Lee and Wrangler have been helping our consumer for centuries to enjoy their daily lives with passion and confidence with our beautiful products. So we are very holistic in our new developments and sustainable innovations and look from the lenses of environment and worker well-being. Just look at environment. The three key areas we are always looking at is CO2 emissions, water, and landfill or incineration. And the common theme is how do we reduce all three, CO2, water, landfill, or incineration, and still bring out the beautiful products that our consumer would like to wear. So that's the most important thing. And secondly, worker well-being. It's too hard that we want to improve the worker well-being. In fact, we are one of those companies which has 10,000 plus folks working in our supply chain internally. We have our own cut and sew facilities in North and Central America. And we are always looking for the improvement of health and safety, not only of our workers, but also workers who are touching our products from our external vendors. So those two things, environment and worker well-being, is the most important thing. And when we are looking at these two aspects, we're always looking from the sustainability as well as innovation. How do we combine those two things and ensure that we provide the minimum impact, the least impact on the environment. So that's the way we look at the innovations.
And Lee Jeans has recently achieved cradle-to-cradle certified bronze and gold jeans. So what has motivated this ambition for you, and what have you learned along this certification journey?
It is a very interesting journey for sure. It all started with Lee's philosophy. And Lee has a philosophy for a world that works. And the whole idea here is to stand tall for what you believe in. And we believe in more sustainable future and bringing all the people to create together that future. Our pillars to create that sustainable future, as Catherine said, similar things, future is people, planet, and our product. This future is going to be built by this continuous improvement, which is in our definition of sustainability. That continuous improvement journey is going to guide us to make that future better. So in this journey, when we looked at Cradle to Cradle program, we immediately felt a connection over there because we found that your program is going to help us to improve our continuous improvement journey and bring the sustainable innovations to the market. We recognize that by utilizing your guidelines, your validation system, Lee creative teams would definitely learn and gain new knowledge for future innovation, but also set a target for creating some commercial products that could pass even platinum level. So that became a challenge for us. So our superb creative teams in Lee took up the challenge and worked with our vendors, partners, including raw materials, including fabrics and components, as well as garment manufacturing, and trying to meet and exceed the guidelines that you have already set up. The idea over here was to make the products which are using least amount of energy, least amount of water, and are made with very good worker conditions. It has not been an easy journey. I'll be very frank. It was never an easy journey to start with, but it was an interesting journey, lots of learning. We failed sometimes. Definitely we failed. We had to rework on many things, but it was an intense learning for us. Extensive work, and after many iterations by our product creative teams, we were able to develop and achieve gold and bronze level in 2 jean styles. We are so proud of those achievements. Our teams are really proud of those achievements. And the other thing which you asked, what is the next journey on this? I think these learnings are going to be the launch pad for the future innovation. Whatever we learn from you guys, whatever we learn while working with you, I think that is going to be our launch pad for future innovation. This is a continuous journey, as we said again and again. This is how we are going to improve the future. We want to make our products more recyclable. We want to make our products which have the least environmental impact from angle of gas emissions, water, landfill standpoint. So this is what we want to do in the future. Use the learning and create more and better products.
Thank you, Drew, for sharing. We really see your passion also here for this journey, which is so linked to innovation, of course. Janine, Khalida has been on the Cradle to Cradle certified journey also for several years. So how has the framework helped you to progress your sustainability ambitions?
That's a nice question, Christina. Really, I love that one. In 2018, we launched our first Cradle to Cradle certified T-shirt. It was a simply white tee. We called it 100% nature. It was made out of tencel, lyocell, micro, and it was, let's say, the starting point for a new dimension within our design team, because we wanted to prove that this first product in terms of like transferring linear design to circular design. And in the beginning, and I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what I'm talking about, who's listening now, who's developing products as well. In the beginning, it was a trial, really. I mean, everyone is talking about sustainability, but nobody wants to make compromises, of course, in the product, because we are talking about underwear, the product that is the closest to your skin. So we needed to be on point in fit and comfort and in quality, of course, needless to say. So in the beginning, it was a trial, but then we figured out we can do it, we can make it. And we really celebrated this first t-shirt. In the beginning, feedbacks were okay. And people were having a lot of questions about it, of course, because you needed to explain the circularity idea. But then we developed and we evolved after this t-shirt because we had totally new discussions and conversations with our partners. We had new ideas in terms of design. We thought like more steps ahead. And this was this unlocked, let's say, a lot of creativity and unlocked a new innovation process for us. So it was an important starting point to start with the first product. Now we carry a lot of more products. We have underwear, nightwear, and loungewear. We increased our material library. And after each little ingredient is so much passion and work, and so much more conversations actually about the bigger goal to a more sustainable future. So since that, we try to enlarge our cradle-to-cradle portfolio every season, so bringing a new innovation season by season into the market. For now, we are standing at about 10% of the total collection of Kalida that's already cradle-to-cradle certified. That are 100 products, that are 166 certificates, so it's quite intense. Maybe if you hear the number 10%, it's not that much, but it is a lot, seeing the fact that we just started in 2018. So after 3 years, we are now there, and our aim is to go up to 20% by 2024. So we are constantly increasing our collection.
And what was your motivation originally to embark on the cradle-to-cradle certified journey, and where you are standing now in terms of certified products, and what are your plans for future scaling?
Well, coming from that high level of quality, as said, for us it was kind of a logical process to go further, as we thought it might not be enough anymore to be the quality pioneers, but to invest in the next step, which definitely is the circular design. So that was actually our starting point, deeply rooted in our sustainability approach from the beginning, since the company was starting. So therefore we thought, well, let's do this trial in terms of transferring linear to circular, and let's see if this is also working with our material library and with the variety of materials and innovations that we had in the past. So we were believing that the key pillars of circular design are perfectly matching our brand, and also like the cradle-to-cradle certificate is the only global standard that really closes the loop. So that was the reason why we started, and we strongly believe in circular design in terms of the three major pillars: to reduce pollution and waste, and to make products and materials that are long lasting, and to also reuse things. So for us, it was the perfect match. And how we were starting, it was like with this white t-shirt, and after this feasibility proof of concept, we were so much passionate about going further, and we started to print the shirt, because Kalida stands for printing and bold colors, and we started to bring the shirt in colors and to print it. We worked with an artist from New York, Emma Vittoria, who was working for famous fashion brands before, and she also felt so much in love with that idea of the t-shirt. So only 3 days later, she was handing in her illustrations, and that was the next level, to bring the prints on the white t-shirt. And then we thought, okay, now we can do this, so we can do more. And we were thinking of how to bring elastics, for example, very important in underwear, and lace into the collection. And that was also why we collaborated with a designer duo named Victor and Rolf. I'm sure you know them. And we were actually the first designer capsule collection that we brought into the market, based on a whole cradle-to-cradle certified material base. which was amazing. We launched that one in 2020, and a particular highlight was lace fabric, the world's first sustainable cradle-to-cradle certified lace. And now this material library and this material box is the base for our future steps towards circular design. So it really marked an important milestone in our history.
So you all three are consumer-facing brands, and let us now turn more towards the consumer angle. So Catherine, what circularity or sustainability expectations do the customers of Calvin Klein fragrances have, and how have you seen these expectations evolve over the years?
So with our product, Calvin Klein CK Everyone, it's a gender-free fragrance celebrating the freedom of expression aimed at today's youth, really Gen Z. And Gen Z not only value purpose, authenticity, and inclusivity, but they're also making a conscious effort toward a clean and more sustainable lifestyle, which is why we put in key product claims, such as the bottle containing 10% post-consumer recycled materials, of the bottle which can be recycled. The pump is not attached to the bottle, so you can take it off, which is unusual for a fragrance. The packaging contains 30% post-consumer recycled materials. And even the branded iconic elastic Calvin Klein band that decorates the bottle can be used again as a hairband or other purposes. In fact, Gen Z today, 72% are willing to pay extra for products and services from companies that are dedicated to social and environmental change. In fact, Euromonitor, in a study of Gen Z attitudes and behaviors from 2017, found that 80% believe that companies should help the environment. 74% want transparency regarding ingredients. 50% viewed natural as a top factor in purchasing decisions, and 75% are politically or socially engaged. This trend is not just limited to Western markets. In China, the use of ethical materials is now considered second only to product quality when it comes to preferences. Calvin Klein offers thought-provoking, accessible, premium fragrances that embrace and inspire all people around the world to create, explore, and express their emotions, beliefs, pushing boundaries to a new era of cultural change. And we really demonstrated that through our CK Everyone campaign, which launched in 2020 as a platform for self-expression with the mantra, I love every one of me, expressed by dynamic individuals, Evan Mock, Elliot Sumner, Cara Taylor, MLMA, Parker Van Nude, and Pretty. The brand really embodies the values and sentiment of this new generation. It's free from gender labels and classifications. It embraces inclusivity and participates in multiple communities. It's real and authentic with no prerequisites or requirements, and expresses a state of youthfulness and mindfulness that is relevant to consumers today.
Yeah, really exciting to hear also the statistics that you're citing. Based on your experience, Catherine, how can sustainability attributes of fragrances or beauty products overall be best communicated to the customers in most meaningful and in most impactful ways?
So consumers really have an expectation today of transparency, and our sustainable claims are traditionally disclosed on the product's packaging in line with any other legal requirements. For example, on Calvin Klein CK Everyone fragrance, the packaging as well as the marketing materials prominently highlight our 5 iconic sustainable features of this product, such as it is vegan, formulated with naturally derived alcohol, it contains ingredients from natural origins, the packaging contains recycled materials, and the packaging is recyclable. And additionally, the tagline, I am a clean fragrance, is displayed on each package and visual and is designed to support Gen Z's desire for honesty and authenticity. And even at point of sale, CK Everyone is displayed on merchandising assets which use corrugated recycled cardboard and sold through beauty advisors who are well trained to share the sustainable features of the products.
Dhruv, turning to you, Lee, Jeans, Wrangler, as you have mentioned, what are your customers expecting in terms of sustainability and leading innovation? How do you integrate those customer insights into your innovation journeys?
Christina, certainly the expectations of our consumers have changed over the years. All of us, including our consumers, are seeing the impact of climate change. Forest fires, flooding, drought, abnormal weather patterns everywhere. So consumer is realizing that they have to make the right decision in everything they do, including their purchases, that slow down this whole climate change. They're much more interested to know where and how their products are made. As Catherine said, transparency is important. The consumer is looking for that transparency. They're much more interested to know where and how their products are made, how the manufacturing of the products is impacting the planet Earth. They're refusing to use products where transparency in manufacturing is not there. From our angle, they want apparel that were made with the least negative environmental impact. As a company, we have been on this journey for decades. It is not something that we started in the last few years. We've been working for years to use right raw materials, reduce water usage in the manufacturing of products. In fact, till date, we have saved about 7 billion liters of water in our manufacturing. We have increasingly looked at incorporating recycled raw materials in our products. And continuing on our journey, we are looking at working with some of the most technological companies in the world that are looking to recycle used apparel. We want to take away the apparel which is supposed to go into either landfill or incineration. We want to avoid that. And we are looking to see how we can bring those materials back into our value chain. We have programs in our factories to collect waste fabrics and use them. From the water angle, we worked with academia and industry partners. That journey was started in 2015. The idea was to bring a technology which can reduce down the water required in dyeing and coloration of the denim fabric. So we started the journey in 2015, and by 2019, we were able to come up with a technology which has cut down the amount of water required to dye a fabric by 99%. That's a big achievement. And just think from the angle of reduction of the water in making of the fabric. So we are talking about materials, we're talking about how to make the fabric, and we're talking about what to do at the end of the life. So from the angle of all these things, we are looking at incorporating all the best technologies we can bring in. We have technologies which are like lasers and ozones to create our garment aesthetics, which are going to be much more user-friendly, worker-friendly, and safer for our workers. So in all, we are looking at all these technologies to make our products better.
Great. So taking a really holistic approach also on the journey, and then communicating this out to the customers.
That's right.
And Janine, if we look at Khalida, what are the demands of your customer base, and how have these expectations changed over the past years?
They definitely have evolved over the years as the circularity idea, or let's say the sustainability idea, is now moving all generations. You need to see it from both sides. The Khalida consumer is really trusting in a high level of quality. So for them, they always did a conscious consumption. That's something that is the fact. On the other hand, we try now to convince and to inspire them to invest in a circular product and to see beyond the design idea that was, let's say, naturally given the last years, to see these new dimensions and innovations in circular design. But we are honestly far away from a high demand for circular products. That's definitely evolving. But as we are so much into, or so much based on a quality product, actually the question pop up, why do I have to invest in that now? So you're having very intense discussions with your consumers, which is very interesting and which is nice. And I think this is just a start for this circular shift that we are in. We have to inspire, we have to give reasons why, and we have to explain, of course, because the cradle to cradle is always raising questions. How does it work, and what does it mean, and why are you doing this? So we are in deep discussions and conversations with our consumers on that topic, which is important to learn from them and also to train them in thinking in terms of circular design.
Which approach are you taking to effectively communicate your sustainability credentials to the customers? And based on your experience, how can this be done in the most credible and meaningful way?
We try to inspire our consumers on every touch point. We are using, of course, packaging and hang tags, QR codes to explain that this is a circular product and that this product is especially made with a lot of care and a lot of innovation. So on the product itself, that's very important to communicate the idea of the design and of the circular design actually. And also, like, we are using influencers, of course, to gain awareness and to raise awareness for the topic. I mean, especially for Gen Y and Gen Z, this is very, very, very much important to talk about sustainability, and they actually expect you to take a leading role in responsibility, and they demand for companies that have an attitude towards sustainability. So we try to raise awareness, we try to inspire, and we try to explain, as said before, on every touch point, what really the idea stands for, as it's not easy to explain. I mean, if you see that a lot of greenwashing ideas are outside there, the consumers are getting so much information about sustainability, everyone is talking about it. So you really have to make sure that you have a lot of ratio behind this saying, that you have to actually kind of prove what you are doing for a future or more future sustainability fashion business.
Let's wrap up our panel and provide an outlook towards the future. And Catherine, if we think about clean beauty, sustainable packaging, so what is your vision for the industry moving in this direction? And what are really the tipping points, the turning points that the industry has to focus on in your vision?
Well, sustainability is important to Coty and central to all we do. It's a global opportunity that will continue to grow. Retailer requests for more sustainable products are increasing as there is a building demand from consumers. And this creates a fantastic opportunity for companies like Coty, which has resources and expertise to innovate and create outstanding sustainable products. It's not simply a response to customer demand. It's also the right thing to do. For us, sustainability sits at the heart of our business and the direction we're headed in. It drives our thinking and our innovation. We drive for sustainability and circularity in our products through our supply chain, and therefore our aim is to use better packaging and less of it as a way of reducing our impact on the environment. We're working across our portfolio of brands to develop more sustainable products, including clean, natural, and vegan products. We've developed roadmaps to stop the use of certain ingredients in some products and product categories. And our Coty Clean list goes beyond the authorities' requirements and our main competitors. The selection of the controversial ingredients has been made through scientific analysis and shows that stopping the use of these ingredients will benefit our consumers and the planet. We evaluate new launches against our packaging 4 pillars: reduce, recycled, reuse, and recyclable. And we've joined the SPICE since its creation to harness industry knowledge in sustainable packaging and build a common framework across the cosmetics industry. But we can't achieve our ambitions alone. The partnerships are fundamental to our approach of assessing and mitigating the impact we have on the environment. We work with many companies and organizations, harnessing their expertise and experience to continually assess and improve how we operate and shape our future plans. And in recent years, for example, we've partnered with Papex, a sustainable packaging specialist. Together, we've developed a molded pulp pack carrier that is fully recyclable and compostable. This innovation is a circular alternative for transporting our products and has been recognized by the European Commission as a circular best practice example of effective packaging and packaging waste management. If you can find that perfect blend, an outstanding product that's sustainable and comes from a beloved brand, then you have a real winner.
Thank you for this vision, of course, really highlighting the important topic of collaboration. And through collaboration, of course, is also one approach to scale. I think we are all aiming for scaling our sustainability approaches. In your vision, how can we take circularity to a scaled approach in the apparel and lifestyle industry?
Definitely, scale is the most important thing. I think everything we do, we have to think from a scale level. So from our vision, like from the Lee Wrangler vision, is to be 100% circular. You know, what I mean by circular is zero landfill and zero incineration. This would mean all ours, as just like Catherine said, reduce, recycle, resell, reuse. There's no one lever, but many important levers here, including an industry-wide ability to collect, sort, recycle all apparel that have gone through use, reuse, resell, and are now bound for either landfill or incineration. The challenge is how should we enhance our capabilities to collect, sort, and at a high industrial level speed to recycle this landfill bound apparel. And that is the most important thing. It is basically how can we do it with minimum challenges towards quality of the raw materials without increasing the cost of the raw materials. That's the most important thing. I think that's the area where we want to focus. And as I said, this is not one single lever, there are multiple levers over here. At the same time, managing the quality and making sure that it is a drop-in to replace the virgin material. And all this has to be done without impacting the health of the workers, health of our people, and the planet. This also means circularity in usage of water and reduce the recycle and recycle the industrial water and reduce our dependency on fresh water consumption. That's the most important thing apart from the material, because water is scarce. It is important, increasingly becoming a scarce commodity. So as Lee and as Contour, we are aggressively looking at this front. We have a program called Indigood Program, and it is all about reducing the fresh water in dyeing of the denim fabric. Currently, we are targeting to reduce down 90% fresh water used in dyeing of our fabrics. And that reduction is coming by incorporating technologies like osmosis, reverse osmosis, recycling of water, zero liquid discharge. So the whole thing over here is reduce water usage and reduce fresh water usage and recycle more water. So from us, our angle, I think that's the most important thing is how can we do it at a scale level and impact more and more of our volumes and more of our apparel industry as much as possible.
Thanks, Drew, for this ambition and vision that you're painting for us. And Janine, what is your vision for a fully circular apparel sector, and which considerations must all brands take in order to be prepared for this future?
Well, as this trend is going on and sustainability is moving whole audiences, circularity is actually the key to unlock a more sustainable future in fashion. That's why, to my mind, the circularity idea has to come more towards the center. Now it's, let's say, it's the cherry on the cake when you invest also in cradle to cradle products. And now it's really time that we move the idea of the big transformation that we have ahead from linear design to circular design towards the center. And what it takes for that is scaling business models. We really have to tackle scalability, and we have to make sure that there are business models that are scalable, as said, because otherwise it will be a niche, and that's something that we shouldn't allow. So for that reason, I'm always saying we have to embrace the circular design, and you have to reskill your designers and your design team in thinking in circular design ways and in innovations. And also you have to invest in new materials and pilot new materials, which might be tough in the beginning, but you have to make a first step. And you have to use as much as possible out of your materials that you brought into the market. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about recycling processes and everything. But I think these three things, really, to reskill your teams and to plant this idea of circularity within your teams, it's so important. and also the idea of, or let's say, to take into consideration that it takes time and that you have to invest in that field. And also very important to my mind is collaboration. It's about exchange. So that's also why I love that platform here, because we have to exchange. It's so tough if you really develop cradle to cradle certified products, and you think of a bra, for example. It's quite tough to develop products like this. So if we collaborate, if we exchange, this whole transformation will be faster and more in focus, and that's what I think that's all about, actually. So do a first move and collaborate and exchange and go out and share your experiences. That's what the industry definitely needs.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine, Dhruv, and Janine, for joining us today and for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting, and thanks for sharing.
We are now coming to the end of our Circular Shift 2021 live event from Amsterdam. We hope that you enjoyed the inspiration, insights, and latest thinking provided by our acclaimed speakers. To further celebrate the best practices and positive impact at the Institute and in our community, we are excited to launch right now the 2021 edition of our yearly inspiration booklet, Innovation for a Positive Future. This booklet represents a celebration of the diverse ways in which companies across the globe are using Cradle to Cradle Certified to design and innovate products made for tomorrow, today. The booklet features leading certification examples from 15 select frontrunners in our community, companies of different sizes, from various sectors, and located in different countries. Download the booklet from our website and be inspired to lead, take action, and make a difference. In case you could not stay with us throughout the entire live event today, we will make the session recordings available on the Institute website from next week onwards. Continue to be in contact with us through our various social media channels and sign up to our newsletters. Circular Shift will return in 2022 as an in-person event. We look forward to seeing you then and wish you well meanwhile. The world needs your sustainability leadership, boldness, passion, and action more than ever. Be the one who makes the circular shift happen.